This lesson begins our unit on verb tense, voice, and mood with a look at the four principal parts of verbs, both regular and irregular. Your lesson objectives are that by the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify and define the four principal parts of verbs and use the correct forms of regular and irregular verbs when forming tenses. Your cue words to pay special attention to today are verb tense, present, present participle, past, and past participle, as well as regular and irregular verbs. Let's start with the warm-up. In your notes, write in a few sentences to describe your morning routine. Use only present tense verbs. So describe your morning routine in a few sentences, only using present tense verbs. Then reflect on what difficulty writers would face if language only had one tense. Pause your video and complete this exercise now. Verb tenses are quite simply the part of the verb that show the time that the action or the state of being describes. They're formed by using the four principal parts of verbs, namely present, present participle, past, and past participle. How the present participle and past participle formed shows whether or not a verb is irregular. And all of these things work together to form verb tense. So, your rule for this is that a verb has four principal parts: the present participle, the past, and the past participle. You are probably familiar with present and past tense, but present participle and past participle are not so commonly addressed. So, starting with an overview, the present part of a verb forms present tense. It's the form of the verb that's listed in a dictionary. So, what you see in he serves the community and she writes often. Serve and writes tell us the action is happening right here, right now. So is they run in PE. Present participle, on the other hand, forms the progressive tenses, and we see this when we see a helping verb followed by a verb that ends in ing. So this is a verb phrase verb part. For example, Bill was serving his neighbors yesterday. She was whistling as she walked down the road. They were feeling hungry, so they went to look in the fridge. Here we notice was serving, was whistling, were feeling. There are helping verbs down that line, and all of the main verbs end in ing. This is using the present participle to form the tense in these sentences. Past tense forms the past tense, is formed by the past part of the verb, and varies depending on whether or not the verb is regular or irregular. So we won't see super consistency here depending on which kind of verb you're seeing, but it always forms the past tense. He served his community today, she assigned homework, I taught the class, etc. Now in the past participle, you're going to form the perfect tenses using a helping verb plus the past part of the verb. So, you'll see instead, he has served throughout his life. They have all assigned homework a lot. This is a very, very good example of how these parts break down. Has and served, all assigned, but this doesn't always show the full picture. So we're going to look at them in context of regular verbs where your past and past participle forms have a standard pattern. All of them are made past by adding ed to the present form, and that's what makes it a regular verb. A regular verb adds ed to the present form. The helping verb that's used to form the present participle and past participle may vary with verb tense. So, here's a chart. We've got some verbs down one side in the present form, which is pretty much our base form. And then we can see how they change with these other verb parts. Call becomes the present participle when we add am and ing, am calling. Past becomes called, and then it turns to the past participle by adding have and called. And we see the same thing with our irregular verbs, which simply do not get ed when they turn past tense. Bring still is am bringing for the present participle, but past becomes brought, so the past participle becomes have brought. And what this tells us is that we need to pay attention to the entire verb phrase in order to know what verb part we are using. So let's take a practice. I want you to put these 6 sentences into your notes, then pause your video lesson and identify whether the underlined portion is present, present participle, past, or past participle. Friendly hint. Don't forget to look for helping verbs before you identify the verb part, because both past participle and present participle have helping verbs in front of the main verb. Ready, steady, pause your video and do this exercise. All right, let's go over these. For number 1, you should have identified this as present. It's simply type. Type is happening now. That makes this verb present. But number 2 is the past participle, because it's not just listened, it's have listened. 3 is present participle, because it's not trying, it's am trying. 4 is past, because it is simply did. 5 is past participle. And 6 is past participle. But I want you to write down why they are past participle in your notes, and I will be looking for this answer when we discuss this in class. And in the meantime, to sum up, verb tense tells the time an action takes place. Tense is formed by combining those principal verb parts we've talked about: present, present participle, past, and past participle. This lesson's a little different, so make sure you complete the formative for your homework grade that this video is embedded in.